morning. I know it's been a long day, last one for the day, almost drinks time. So I'm going to try to keep this light and fun. I'm not going to try to shock you with anything you don't already know. But I really just want to take it back to the basics, actually. And the reason for that is I think sometimes we get really caught up in advancing our skills, and I think sometimes those really key important things get stuck in the back of our memory. So it's time to dig them out and just refresh our memories from that. So we all know that technology is changing. We all know that technology is changing rapidly. Our industry is, quite frankly, really hard to keep up with. But it's not just mapping, right? It's not just GIS. The way that people are consuming information these days, and also the expectations as data consumers, all of that's changing too. So it's really important that we're keeping up to date with it. Now, having said that, with all these fun, exciting new things, it's really easy to lose sight of those fundamental basics that we learnt back in the day. Creating really appealing maps and making sure we're getting the right messages across and remembering our audience. So that's really what I want to talk to you about today. Now, before I get into it, I want us to have a little yoga break because it's been a long day. And I think we could all do with a little bit of stretch. But to keep it on the geo theme, what I'm going to do is show you a bunch of maps. But for 1 second, real quick flash, so you've got to be paying attention. When I show you these, I want you to basically tell me whether you think they appeal to you. And the way you're going to do that is, if you like what you see, you're going to stretch your arms up and have a nice big stretch. And if you don't like what you see, then you're just going to, simple, right? No, you can just put your hands on your head. I don't want to break anyone's backs while we're here. Really, really simple stuff. Okay, here we go. Ready? What do you think? Up for yes, on your head for no. Okay. Cool. Next one. Oh, sorry, there are no right or wrong answers. I probably should have warned you about that. You're allowed to say what you feel. Okay, interesting, right? I love this. This is more for my own entertainment, sorry. Another one. All right, and one more. Okay, that one's a pretty popular one. Cool. Look, I do have a little bit of a point, I promise. And the point of that is that first impressions do actually matter. Because we are judgmental and we like to judge what we see, even if it's just for a quick flash. So when we're thinking about our audience and we're thinking about the products that we're putting out there, the work that we're putting out there, whether it's a mobile app or a web map or a static map, we don't want to scare our audience away. And so let's make sure that they love what they see the second that they see it. So let's start with that audience. Let's just keep on that for a minute. Who are our audience? Well, it's a tricky one to explain, but I want us to remember that we should never, never, never forget our audience. And I know that sounds so simple and obvious, but I constantly see countless examples of where we forget the audience. And I'm not just talking about mapping here, I'm talking about outside of our industry. So I'm sure if we went around the room right now, you could all, without hesitation, tell me an example of recently where you were frustrated by user experience or user interface or just not being able to obtain the information that you were looking for really quickly. Right? This happens all the time. So a universal problem, we can all relate to this, right? We've all been that audience. So let's keep that in mind when we're putting up our work out there. But okay, let's talk about this audience. Who are they? Well, I want you to remember that your audience are goldfish, essentially. I want you to remember that image. What do I mean by that? Well, it's official that we have an attention span of less than 8 seconds. And that number is getting shorter and shorter. So you don't have a lot of time to impress your people. Keep that in mind. Your audience loves to talk. God, they love to talk. I'm sure you've all been tweeting today as well, which is great. But look, your audience will definitely talk about the bad things, but they also talk about the good things. They know what they want, and they want the answers now, and accordingly, they're going to go and speak to people about it. So let's just make sure that whatever we're putting out there is resulting in a positive dinner conversation, right? Our audience is connected all the time, all the time. I mean, that's not me, but it's a fairly close, okay, I'm not going to say it. It's kind of similar to what I'm like. The second you get up, you can't help yourself, right? We are always connected. That's just the way it is now. And I'm going to tell you something that I'm going to have to be really honest with you. Whether you're from a local government or a utilities company, whatever it might be, I'm afraid to break it to you, but people are not coming to your website for a browse. They're just not. So don't go thinking that people are going to just be there because they got nothing better to do. That's not the case. If someone's coming to your website or using one of your products, it's because they have a very specific question that they want answered, or a specific agenda. I want you to bear that in mind, right? Focused apps, focused maps. It's really what we're all about. This leads me to user interface and user experience. Now, I know that neither of these aren't mapping examples. These are just self-serve ticket machines at a train station. But I want to emphasize that word self-serve, because that's what your maps are. These are just things that frustrated me. So this was in Tokyo and this was in London. I have no idea how I'm meant to know the price of my ticket. And on that one, rushing for the train, and there are about 100 different possibilities of what I could have picked, and apparently I'm meant to know whether it's currently off-peak time or not. So I just want you to remember your audience. What kind of experience are they going to get from using your products? And I think a really common mistake that happens is that people think about cartography first, and then that user experience comes later. But actually, they go hand in hand. You really need to be thinking about both and how it's going to come across to your audience. So, with that, I'm just going to jump into a really quick demo. Again, I don't plan on shocking you with anything too crazy, but just trying to show you a different angle of something. So here I've got some suburb boundaries. This is from the recent census data, 2016. Suburb boundaries in Sydney, and they also contain information about motor vehicles per dwelling. Now, you can just throw your data onto a map, and that tells a story of some sort, but I'm challenging you to think more about your data and to try to put some beautiful maps out there, but also remember that they can be information products. So the two sort of things that we need to always be thinking about. So with this example, just a couple little things I want to point out. For starters, the aerial base map. I know we all love that, and there's nothing wrong with that, but sometimes I think we should question it, because it doesn't always add a lot of value. Sometimes it just adds clutter. So in this case, I'm actually just going to pick a simple grayscale base map, something that's not going to take away from the data itself. Now, the next thing I want to show is, this is an ArcGIS Online at the moment, and ArcGIS Online has something called smart mapping. That's the symbology. So what that means is, when I go to look at the symbology of this layer, I can pick a certain attribute. So in this case, I'm going to look at dwellings that have no motor vehicles. And it's going to go off and look at my data, and it's going to come back with a suggestion of what it thinks might be a good way of representing this information. So immediately now I can look at this and go, oh, this is actually telling me a bit more information than it was previously. But this is the kind of stuff that I want you to be going through. I want you to be looking at different angles of ways that you could be telling your story and making sure you're getting the message across that you want. On this occasion, I'm actually just going to try something a little bit different. I'm going to use this counts and amounts by colour, and I'm going to play around with some of the features in here. Now I'm going to, again, nothing crazy, right? So I'm just going to normalise this with the total dwellings, and I'm going to pick a more simple colour ramp, so I'm just going to go with the blue. Outlines. Outlines is always a funny one. I think sometimes we love to put outlines on everything, but sometimes it doesn't actually add much to it. So question everything that you're doing, right? Question everything that you're adding into your maps. I'm going to say okay to that and invert it. Now, a little trick that I love, and I think many people miss when they're making maps, especially if you're looking up just one here. So, transparency. You can add transparency by attributes. And I think this is a really effective technique in mapping that a lot of people don't necessarily know about. So if I go into the attribute values here, and again pick that field of 0 motor vehicles, no cars, this is what I'm interested in. I'm trying to find out which suburbs don't have any cars in Sydney. What I can do is apply a transparency on the low values, and the effect of that is that it starts to really pop out at me. My data starts to really highlight. So you can actually see that transparency on some of the other suburbs, but I want you to remember that not all of your data is interesting. Sorry, but it's true. So think about what you're trying to get across. So in this case, I've got something that's really popping out a little bit more, right? Really standing out to the end user. And what I love about this now is that if I click OK to this, look, I haven't made a lot of changes, but I have just changed the overall look, and when someone's doing that quick 1-second test, that's what they're going to see this time, rather than sort of cluttered with the aerial base map and so on. But what I'm trying to challenge you to do is not only make appealing maps, but I want you to try to discover things, insights from your maps that you might have not seen was there previously. So when I was playing around with this, I grabbed some train lines data from Transport New South Wales, and would you believe it, the train lines match up almost perfectly to the suburbs that have no motor vehicles. Right, so now I suddenly have evidence that I can work with. If I'm going to go and try to encourage people or encourage stakeholders, whoever it might be that I'm talking to increase the number of train lines we have, I now have a common language story that I can show. I can put something, it's not just my words, there's a visual representation of this. So that's the kind of thing I'm trying to tell you, trying to get you to think about. Not only whatever you do from here on, but look back at your previous work as well and see what you could change, see what information you could find out of it. So if we quickly jump back to the slides, let's go through a real quick summary and tips and tricks that I always like to think about. So the first one is to be focused. Now we saw in the plenary, we saw Ergon Energy talk about having all those focused applications. And I think the best maps and apps do one thing really well. So think about what that is. What's your purpose? Are you trying to tell a story? Are you trying to convince someone of something like the train lines? What is it that you're trying to get across? Figure that out and do it really, really well. So I've got a couple of examples here. This is one of Northern Beaches Council where they've just put out something for their community to be able to go in and find out what capital works programs are currently happening around them. Focused, simple, self-serve application. That's what we should be putting out there. And likewise, Brisbane City Council has a great one on what's near me. Community centres, libraries, whatever it might be, schools. Allow your people, allow your audience to get the answers that they need without having to search your entire website. They're not there for a browse. Don't forget that. Number 2, start simple and then simplify. So less is more. We all know that. It's not anything new to you, but as I was doing before, I really want you to question everything, challenge everything that's going on your maps and everything that you're putting out there. I really can't emphasize that one enough. I know we love to put all the extra bits and bobs in there, but really, do you need that aerial base map? Do you need a legend, or does the map speak for itself? If you're going to add some tools in there, which ones and why? Why are you adding those tools? Just because they're fun? No, think about which ones should be there, really. If they're not adding to your purpose, they're not adding to your message, they don't align with it, leave it out. How will it be viewed? And the reason I say think mobile first is there's an official stat now that says that more than half of our web browsing actually is done on a mobile device these days. We're obsessed. We can't go anywhere without our phones. So it is definitely one to consider. Not always relevant, but definitely one to consider. Now, if you're using Esri products such as Web App Builder, just a little tip, and I think a lot of people don't realize this, down the bottom corner, so once you've created your map and you're ready to go, down the bottom there is a little preview icon. So before you publish it, you can go and check out how it will appear on all the different devices. Just a handy thing to know. And same with things like the templates or the story maps. Actually, that's something I'll just quickly jump back and show you because, again, maybe you're not aware. So when you're finished, you can easily share a map using the number of different templates that Esri has provided for you, including story maps. So they're all ready to go, and it makes your life much easier. But these have all been made so that they're layout responsive. So you don't have to think about the whole mobile thing. It's all done for you. My fourth tip is draw your audience in. Now, where possible, you should try to limit your use of colour. I know sometimes we love to go nuts with our colour and use every colour of the rainbow, but I think the best maps really do limit the colour. And look, we're a big fan of the dark base maps here, those simple base maps. The colour really pops out on those. Your message really pops out. So you can see in some of these examples here. It's definitely one to consider. All of these are drawing your attention to those specific points. Little tip though, if you are going to use a dark base map, it's the light colours that have more contrast against them. If you're going to use the light colours, the light base map, it's the dark colours that really pop out. Just worth keeping in mind because we've seen a few examples where in this one here, for example, my eyes are immediately drawn to the light colour. That's actually the low value. So make sure you're getting the right message out there. Am I reaching everyone? Surprisingly, I mean, there's a lot of people, so 8% of males in Australia are colourblind, and a small portion of females. But it's definitely one to consider. The work that you're putting out there, you want to make sure you're reaching as large an audience as you can. And for a map like this, it would be seen like this to a colourblind person. I want you to know, though, for the things that we showed before in ArcGIS Online, looking at those colour ramps, for example, Esri has put a lot of work into making sure that thinking has been done for you so that they are colourblind safe. So you don't have to worry about that. Now, if you're creating other maps elsewhere, there are tools online such as Colour Brewer. Some of you might have used, perhaps you're familiar with that. There are online tools available for you, but just one to remember. Along with the lines of the drawing your audience in, remember that you're in control of, well, your maps, but you're also in control of your audience in a way, right? So you're in control of where your people are going to look. This is using that technique that we showed before, applying some transparency on the lower values, making your data really pop, your message really pop. So remember that you are in control and you can guide your audience's eyes where you want them to go. My last tip is to show mum or dad, to show a non-GIS professional. They're a self-serve tool. I can't stress that enough. And you don't have a lot of time with your audience. So all I'm saying is I know that these are things that you all know, but they're dug down in your memory somewhere. Let's get them out of there, those basic things. Let's make sure that the maps that we're putting out there are beautiful, but that they're also information products and that we're getting the right message across. I don't want us putting out the wrong message purely because we haven't thought about these simple things, about the basics. So that's all for me. If you have any questions or anything, any comments, I'd be happy to have a chat to you. That's your line, sorry.
That's right. Yeah, we actually have time for a couple of questions. Actually. So we have Jade in the middle with the mic, and if you have any questions for Celine, please ask them.
Hi. I was just wondering, as GIS professionals, we're always pushing the boundaries of technology, but it seems like half of the clients or the organisations that we work for are dragging their heels, especially around compliance and regulation. And we see a lot of, I guess, paper-based stuff that's still being produced.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts or opinions on how do we get those that are regulating particular industries to get, I guess, more on the digital side of things?
That's a great question. It's a tough one because I definitely don't have the answer that's going to make you all leave here and go, right, we know how to fix this. Let's all immediately go out and change everyone's opinions. People have their reasons as well for dragging their heels sometimes. I think maybe I'm being a little bit geo-geek at the moment, maybe I'm being biased as well, but I think our industry is so special, so unique. I think we really have the power to show the value that GIS and digital web GIS, for example, can bring. So it's more about getting people to listen, perhaps. I genuinely believe that things like that very simple example that I showed with the train lines, I think it speaks for itself. So sometimes people just need to realise that what they're missing out on, almost. It's a really difficult question because I struggle with the same thing as well. But maybe we can all collectively get together and come up with some good plans of encouraging people to make that move. But I really do think it speaks for itself. So, yeah, show people what GIS can, the potential of it.
Hi, Chris Lebush. I think you answered the question right in the end, but you didn't realise it's being part of a collective. And I think I'm a member of SEBA, and they've recently announced a personal member tier. So if you're in an organisation that's not a GIS or spatial organisation, think of joining your professional bodies and put your specific needs in the greater community so that when we do the lobbying and the advocacy, etc., your industry or your part of business comes up so that we can make those changes. Because if you look at things like 3D Queensland, etc., it's really the industry associations and business groups that drive that. So become a part of that. And I work in mining, and if I've got to do another paper map, well, I can't say that because I will do another paper map. So the collective part.
Yeah, and I know SEBA does some great work. I think the other thing that sometimes we probably forget is that we only show things within our GIS bubble, but the whole thing about mapping and GIS in general is it is a common language that anyone can understand. You don't need to have a GIS background, right? So we need to not be afraid to show our work outside of our little circle. And it's also applying some of those simple techniques as well to make sure that we are talking to people that don't have a GIS background, removing the GIS jargon, simplifying it down, making our message pop, all of that kind of stuff. And hopefully people can be easily convinced if we can just show them how incredible it is. I'm a geo geek, so it's probably I can't get enough of it.
So we can take one more question. Otherwise, you can always talk to Celine in the Tech Hub after the event. Thanks a lot, Celine.
No worries. Thank you. Thanks for being here.